Hi, everybody. We are going to start today by just talking a little bit more about SART and our biannual reporting. My name is Deepika Modali. I'm the SART project coordinator, and with me I have.
Hi, y'all. Rose, Luna, CEO of TASA. Thank you all for taking time to listen and join in today.
Yeah, so today we are going to SART, collaborate, and listen.
I
As
love
you
it.
know, as you know, back in 2021, SB 476 was passed, and that means that now all 254 counties are required to have a sexual assault response team, which gives the opportunity for all the folks that work with sexual assault survivors, adult sexual assault survivors, to be meeting at least quarterly to talk about their protocols, their procedures, what they're doing to serve survivors, and ultimately have a more trauma informed, collaborative approach to ending sexual violence in their communities. With that bill came several requirements. That included the required members, that included required trainings, creating protocols for a more efficient response to sexual assault in the community, as well as a biannual report every odd year that would evaluate those protocols and share how that county's or regional SART was doing. And so we just, well, not just, but we had our first round of reporting in 2023. And with that, we got so much great information, and TASA is just really excited to share that with everyone. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we learned from the reports. Rose and I are going to kind of chat about what we learned, what that kind of means going forward. And then we have some an exciting document that's going to come out that's going to share that with all of you. And so this is kind of the precursor to that, to give you, kind of a little appetizer of what's to come and what we're going to share.
Well, yeah, I'm so excited, Deepika, for everyone to see the report. Just, as you mentioned, just what we're learning from that. And
Mhm.
thank you for taking the time to kind of share with everybody and allow me to ask some questions about this to kind of give, again, like you said, the opening act, which is what I'm calling myself when I go and do something at a start before you show up. Before the main show, the main dish. But when you did it. Thank you for doing that overview of the SART report, why it's required. I have a couple questions on that, just in case for
Yeah.
folks who are not familiar. So
Mhm.
you said the SART report is due every odd year.
Yes.
When in that odd year, and who does it go to locally? How does that look?
Yeah, so it is due December 1st. So we actually have, this year is also a reporting year, so December 1st, 2025. And it is due to the county's commissioners court. And the reason for that was when the bill is being created, and I think folks were trying to figure out, who are the important members of the county that need to be involved. One of the things that was realized that we have 254 counties, right? So having everything in 254 counties would be such a challenge. But the one thing that was consistent was county commissioners. And so because of that, that felt like the best place for this to land and the best place for there to be an accountability piece.
Thank you. And Deepika, so as far as coverage, like with all the reports and this report that's going to come out, and I know that there's probably others, but based on this report, how many counties are covered by this report that you were going to release in
Yeah.
August?
Well, so right now in total, we have about 149 counties that are currently either having an active SART or are working on establishing a SART, which is really great because that's almost about 60% of the state is working on their SART, which is really amazing because I think when we started, we were close to a little over 30%. Now we're at 60%. So that's almost a 50%, that is a 50% jump, right? And then that's 60% of the state, which is awesome. In the reports, we have about 110 counties represented. We had about 54 individual county reports, 15 regional SART reports, and about 69 reports that we either received or were turned in to commissioner's court, and we were able to obtain them that way. So yeah, we got a lot of good information, and it's really exciting.
And so what I think is so interesting is I remember when, that bill was going through, we were looking at the components of the bill, and one of the components that you mentioned earlier is the requirement for the reporting, right? And but
Mhm.
also it kind of gives a few line items of what that data should be. But I
Mhm.
also know that some folks did just that and other folks did that plus some, or maybe not that but other things. So I was just going to ask you, and first of all, thank you to everybody who submitted not only your report to the required entity in your area, but you also sent it to TASA, to us, for us
Mhm.
to be able to start to make sense of it, and all just to, in the vein of being helpful. But Deepika, when you started to see all that, the different types of data, again, although it's listed in law, there's a few things that we need to get. I know that we're going to talk about later how we can even make that even tighter. But
Yeah.
how did you herd the data cat? Herding of the cats, but herding of the little data cats, the little cute little data
Yeah,
cats.
that is such a good question, and I just see, like, little cats running around, like, with a little
So cute little
recording, like,
things.
little notepad, like, recording in, like, computers, and that's very adorable, and maybe we need to, like, do
It's on the
something with
cover
that.
of the report.
Maybe make a T-shirt, "Data Cats," I don't know.
Oh my god, I love that.
Um we love our theme and T-shirts over here at Tasa, so,
And cats.
um yeah, so I think, something that we were impressed well, one of the things was, I think that people are actually really interested in figuring out a way to get data, and I think by making that required, at least partially, there were certain data points that were required, and that included, investigations, indictments, and those were kind of the main pieces, but I think that with that came well, if we're trying to find that data anyway, it's good for us to look into the other pieces. And one of the things I was trying to impress upon folks is in order to even really understand the required pieces of data, we need to have data from all the members of your SART, right? To really understand how we're serving sexual assault survivors. And if we're taking the time to meet at least quarterly, right? Like this is something that we can really utilize to inform how we work with sexual assault survivors in our communities. And that's really what the SART is for, right? Is to better our response and to make it better for survivors, right? And so a really concrete way to do that is to know the data, to know what's actually happening. So that was kind of a way to have that conversation, and to think about, well, if we are able to like show what we're doing, then we can also justify like look at like what the SART is doing, right? If we can say like in 2022, we noticed that we had this many hotline calls come into our rape crisis center, which resulted in this many hospital accompaniments, which resulted in this many reports to law enforcement, which resulted in this many cases going to the DA's office and many cases getting tried. Um, that really shows if we can look at that for 1 year and then do that again for the next year, we can see the results of what our SART is actually doing when they're meeting together. And it gives us the opportunity. It also gives us the opportunity to see what the gaps are and where we're missing. So it was really having these conversations and having these conversations over and over again, and showing folks that there really is like data behind that shows that the more we collect data and the more we can like show what we're doing, the more we're going to have survivors come forward. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, no, I love that. And the consistency. And I think, like you said, we're going to try to get toward, and seeing that consistency helps us to kind of
Yeah.
track, not
And
in a way that is like, oh no, like the wagging of the finger kind of tracking, but
right.
of that, like, oh, this is our baseline kind of tracking, and how can we get better?
Yeah. How can we get back? And I think too, it's also thinking about data collection for your particular county or counties, depending on whether you are a SART individually or if you're a bigger area and it's regional, like thinking about how you're collecting data. Because I think for everybody, that's kind of been the question, right? And that's something that we've learned a lot from doing this report, right? We got a lot of different data, a lot of interesting points that I'm going to share in that document that's going to go out. But one of the things we also learned is it was hard to analyze that data throughout the state because everyone kind of reported it differently. So one of the things we want to work on is thinking about how we can do that reporting consistently so we can actually use that data to learn more about the state and the trends and what we're seeing. And that way we as TASA can, you know, make some of those things that we're seeing and make those priorities, right? And make those initiatives and think about that as we go into new legislative sessions, right? But the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we can really have consistent data that looks like similar and is more measurable. So that was actually something we learned doing this, that it would be helpful if we did that going forward.
You know, I just realized I say data and you say data. Maybe it's because I'm from the South or rural Texas. I don't know if a linguist is out there. I don't. Maybe I say data.
Yes,
But I just realized I
that
was
is
like
so
data, and you were
interesting.
like data. I'm like, ooh,
Data,
I gotta, I
data.
gotta fix it. I
Oh
gotta
my
fix this.
God. That's so interesting. I'm from the Midwest originally, so I wonder if that
A
like
little different.
plays
I don't
into
know.
it. Yeah,
It's
no, that's
probably
so cool.
it's me. I usually say things in the wrong way, so it's me. But I just
Yeah.
something I noticed. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
no,
will
I
get
love
back
it.
on track now.
No, I love it.
Um, so I was gonna ask you what I'm dying to know. There's a few things, but one is challenges. Was there like any themes or patterns in these reports? And I know that you were having to cull through and analyze, and like I
Mhm.
said, herding of the data or data cats
Data, data.
to figure out how do we get this together. But in all that, as you were analyzing this, did you notice anything that rose to the top or any patterns of challenges in the field?
Yeah, and I think about the challenges in two ways. I think about the challenges that we learned that actually have to do with the field, which I know is what you're specifically asking, and then I thought about the challenges about what it looks like for the SART itself and the challenges that the SART is having, which is like, employee turnover and making sure they have consistent folks coming, getting all the required members, right? And getting that interest, what that kind of looks like, being able to do a case review. I know there was a lot of feedback about like, we don't have adult sexual assault in our community, right? Especially in our smaller rural counties. And we do, right? But folks are maybe not reporting. And so that was something and that's actually relevant to your question, right? And specific. And that's one of the things that we were kind of seeing is in smaller counties and more rural counties, the reporting of adult sexual assault was vastly different than the reporting of child sexual assault, right? And so that also brings to the table why a SART is so important, because I think when the community sees that there are folks interested in what they're doing, that are taking the time out of their busy days and schedules and having concentrated communal time that they're meeting to talk about sexual assault, adult sexual assault, then that can result in more reporting. So I'm actually really excited to see what it's going to look like when we get the new round of reportings in 2025. And I share that to say, like, I went to a SART meeting in, I believe it was Fayette County, and they were talking about how they had not really had a lot of adult sexual assault reporting. And then they had one adult survivor that reported, that went to the hospital, and they noticed how the survivor commented and noticed how everyone was collaborating with each other. They noticed how, as they went through the process, like how the law enforcement was interacting with the advocate from the crisis center, how that kind of carried over to the prosecutor's office, what their experience was like at the hospital between the advocate law enforcement professional and the SANE nurse. And that resulted in them going out into the community. And then they had 2 more sexual assault reports. And this is a very small county that, so I think we have to think about that. And those are things that we're seeing. I think some other feedback that we were like getting in the field was that, wait times for certain areas, if there was only one hospital, were coming up more. Um, so that was something that we had shared. Survivors not always knowing what all the resources are and needing some more support about that. So those were a few pieces. I know those are just a few things. Is there any other like specific things that I can answer? I feel like there's a lot to share,
Data cats, data cats, data cats.
Yeah.
It was like we got so much, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we have this information. And yeah, those challenges that you mentioned make sense. It's kind of on par with, I mean, just in anecdotally, when I go out there and talk to different SARTs or talk to different programs, it is deep about all those things. Like you hear that, and I think to kind of summarize what you said about the survivor who recognized and felt comfortable and maybe felt even comforted and more safe to know that everyone, all the entities were talking. Is I remember when this thing first passed and we went out to Coryell County, their SART, they were getting it started, and the county judge out there, I think his name was Roger Williams, Roger Miller, I don't know, something like that. But he is, I don't know if he's still the county judge, but I remember we were walking into the parking lot about to leave, and we were just having these really great discussions about SART purpose. And he said something, and it has always stuck to me. And I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he's the county judge of Coryell County. He said, "Oh, like his light. I don't know if it was a light bulb or he would just kind of." Anyway, he said, "Oh, so what you're saying is the purpose of the SART is to ensure that a survivor, one, feels comfortable coming forward, and two, doesn't regret it because we're working together." And I was like, my God, bingo, that's it. Anyway, so I think that kind of helps to round out a little bit, or to add to what you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. No, I always love when Rose tells that anecdote because it's just so
I love that.
it
I need to go tell him.
yeah, no, I mean it's such a great anecdote, and I think like it's something that I'm always trying to figure out a way to like continue to stress. Like I think I was just saying this the other day. I feel like I'm so annoying about being like, no, but SART is so important because it's really a way for us to like have these conversations. And I think we all want the same thing, right? Who are doing this work. We all want to serve survivors to the best of our abilities and support them as they go through this journey. And I think the only way you can really do that is if you're communicating and if you're not in silos, right? Because that doesn't work, it just doesn't work.
So yeah, no, thank you for that, Deepika. And I know that this next topic that I'm going to bring up is probably a topic we could do on its own. But I just kind of wanted to see if you had any thoughts or quick summary or just anything you want to share in regards to this. But case review, and that's another thing I hear all the time when I go out there is case
Yeah.
review. Can we do it? Do we need to do it? How do we? How many often? But what's happening? What did you see with the case review in regards to
Yeah. So case review is so important. It's really, and I think what I want to, impress upon folks is the case review is really a way for us to evaluate our protocols. That was something big we really stressed with SARTs was we needed to be able to put something down that showed what we were doing with survivors, what every community partner was doing, and what those intersections are, how we can work together. And in order for us to see, and we can write those down, right? We can say, like, this is what we're doing, this is how it works. But unless we're actually going through them and seeing, like, does it actually work? We need to be able to evaluate them, right? And the best way to do that is through a case review. And so that means really thinking about the survivors that you've worked with and who has gone through working with everyone that's at your SART and what did that look like. And we didn't want, and we, one of the things we wanted to encourage too is like, it doesn't have to be a case that was perfect or everything went right. We really want it to be something that you can take the time and evaluate and see what worked, what didn't work. So with this first round of reporting, we got about 11 case reviews. Um, Two were from a regional SART, and then we had about nine individual. So, even with that, we got some really great information, some things that we were able to kind of take away and see what we could do going forward. So, some of those things that we saw was, in was just additionally, well, not additionally, but just from the beginning, this was a good way to evaluate protocols. So some counties were really interested in going more in depth on the individual aspects. Some counties really made sure they had like a checklist that they wrote down to kind of be like, did we um, manage to serve the survivor with all the major points that we had articulated out in our protocols? So and they did a good job of like choosing cases that, like, one case, for example, they had a survivor come in that did not want to SANE right away, but did the SANE the next day. And we were able to kind of see how their protocols gave the survivor the right to choose while also informing the survivor of, collection times and what that means. And so kind of being able to have that information was really helpful, and kind of being able to see like, oh, like they gave that survivor the opportunity to make that decision in the moment, but still be able to come back and have that same exam and move forward. We got some feedback about what it means for the advocate to be involved. Um, you know, when the advocate is being asked if the advocate is actually available, there were some challenges with advocate availability. There are concerns with advocates being present in certain pieces of the investigations. Is that okay if the officer asks the advocate to be present? How can we put that into our protocols in a way that's clearer? Which I really thought was amazing that they were able to utilize that like information, like, oh, actually maybe that wasn't the way we want to do this. And so when we go back into our protocols, we can talk about when is the right entry point for the officer and the advocate to work together to serve that survivor when it comes to the interview piece. And I think that was really great information we got. We also were able to find that there was like a disparity and a miscommunication around the delivery of essential resources. So in Wilson County, they actually introduced an advocate initiated response to bridge that gap, and they had a whole process. And there'll be a little bit more information about that in the report. And then like just thinking about like things we need to focus on. So Tarrant County, for example, was like, okay, this case wasn't solved, so we know that we need to discuss gaps that we found in victim services to, see how that goes the next time we have someone report. So I think that, and they had a form actually to evaluate. So I think those sort of things, seeing how people kind of did their protocols and what they learned is only going to help us moving forward. So I look forward to next year, and hopefully we'll have more cases that are reviewed. And one of the things we want to do is give a little bit more support around that, give a little bit more guidance about how you can evaluate your protocols. I know it can be a lot to just be like, here are your protocols, go.
Yeah.
So what we want to kind of do is work on providing some more of that guidance. And we're hoping to get that out in the next month or so.
I love that, Deepika, because protocols, I think when folks are just trying to survive and keep their head above water as they're creating their SART, I've had conversations with some where it's almost seen as a checkbox. Protocol's done, but it seems like the protocols are like the life breath of this whole thing. And I love that you said case review is a way for you to evaluate your protocol. Because I think like that, just defining it in that way, which to me is a different, not a different approach. It's an approach. In
Right.
the way that I've heard it across the state, it's more about what did they do wrong? What did I do wrong? And that will come out, but I love the way that you define
Yeah.
that. And this evaluates the protocols that you all set forth and how they work and if tweaks are needed. So I
Yeah.
love that.
And I think too, like it's it's accountability for us too, right?
Mhm.
Because it shows us like what we're seeing across the state. This is
Right.
like what's working, what's not, and then this is how we can support and make that better, right? So it it goes up. It like, it starts here that you're evaluating, and I think it feels small possibly, but it's really not. It has like a lasting trajectory that goes up all the way to the state and gives us the opportunity to figure out ways that we can continue to support as well.
Absolutely. As you were culling through the information, did you notice any like creative or innovative approaches to the work?
Yeah, I noticed a lot of cool things. And some people too, just to like give a quick more one more shout out to case review. So McLennan County, for example, did a mock case review. And so they didn't do a full case review yet, but one of the reasons they did the mock case review was so they can utilize that information to create a case review protocol. And I thought that was really awesome. Like that they were like taking the time to do that. And that's something that I think other SARTs could do that might be really helpful. Um, a few things that we learned that were kind of neat that we saw across the state. So Harris County SART actually did wanted to have survivor involvement, and that's one of the things I hope that we can bring more focus on in the next couple of years. Is we can't do this work for survivors without survivors, so having them at the SART table is so important. And I know at certain SARTs there are survivors, but we want to make that safe for everybody to do. And I know it's sometimes in smaller counties that can be a little bit more complicated. So something that we want to be very, we want to just do that in a way that is very trauma informed and putting the survivor first. But they did get some really good input because the SART put out these surveys, and so they got some good feedback that yes, they had services were accessible and that was amazing, but there were some barriers when it came to obtaining the services and getting that quality of care. So then now Harris County SART is able to like go forward knowing that they have that feedback. Um, so Blanco and Llano, they have and Burnett, they have a regional SART. And so they created a system for data collection. And with that system, they were actually able to capture things that they weren't able to before. And then with the SART, they ended up seeing that they had a 30% increase in hotline calls. And I think it was a 275% increase in SANE accompaniments. Like it was crazy. Like, yeah. And so that is another reason why data is so important, right? That you're like seeing that. Um, Jefferson County started doing working groups and then collaborating together on the information packet that the survivors were getting, because I think sometimes the information packet is very advocacy and crisis center heavy, and that's great. But I think the SART was working together to make sure that that packet had all of the information in one place. And I know that's something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on, is that you get so much information and it's just really overwhelming, especially when you're at the hospital and reporting and doing a SANE exam, and then you're given all this information. That's great, but it would be nice if it was all concise and in one place. So I loved that that was something that the SART was doing together and focusing on.
Wonderful. I tell you what, shout out to all the SARTs and all the stories that you're setting, the stories and the innovative approaches. I think that's what I'm most inspired by. And I don't know, but it seems like a lot of the rural, I'm sure the urban counties do, because Harris County obviously did that
Yeah.
really great thing. I also feel like in my going around the state, the rural counties are super creative and kind
Yeah.
of getting things done. I
Yeah,
don't know if you saw anything
definitely.
like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely neat to see the conversations that they're having. I think it's more intimate because they're smaller groups. And I think that um they're just I think folks now that like they're seeing the importance of SART. I know it's going to take time to get things going, but being able to sit in a room together and have those conversations has brought up a lot of different ideas. I could literally probably sit here for like another 4 hours and tell you all the things that we found, but this will go on forever. So I won't do that. But, I'm hoping that by just sharing some of these little fun nuggets of information that folks will be interested, and it will help people actually get ideas too, on things they can be doing at their SARTs, just hearing about what folks are doing across the state.
And my last question, to give us a little more of a preview, were there any success stories that stuck out to you, Deepika, as you were going through all the data?
That's a really good question. So one of the success stories I know I shared with you before that, we were seeing more folks reporting, and I know that was a very small county, and yet people were starting to come forward. So to me, that's like the ultimate success story, right? And also success stories to me are that SARTs are meeting, like SARTs are coming together. There are 149 counties that are either starting a SART or already meeting, are already starting to have these conversations. And that is like so important, right? We're already starting to do that hard work and that lift. And that's something to me that's like this beautiful story, the success, right?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I can't wait to see the report. But thank you, Deepika, for answering the questions. And I'll hand it back to you. I know that you've got some announcements for everybody in regards
Yeah.
to what you've got going on for SART in the state. And so, yes, I'll just hand it to you to close us out.
Sure. Well, as always, we have office hours and SART coordinator chats that will be continuing. If you have any questions and want to reach out to get on our listserv or to learn more about SART, you can reach me at our SART email right there. So that's the best way to get that information. We will also be the week of the 21st. We will be coming out with our SART biannual report document that's going to go a little bit more in depth about what we learned, what we hope to do with this information, and how TASA helps to better support the SARTs across the state. And we will be having just more documentations and things coming out. We're hoping to have more guidance on case review, on the biannual framework is going to be revised and resent out. So as folks are starting to work on the report, I know December 1st feels far away, but it's actually not that far. We're already in April, which is crazy. I can't believe it. And so with that, with case review, some case review guidance, putting together that biannual framework again, so that way you guys have that support. And we are always here, always available. Please reach out if you need anything. The other thing that we wanted to share is Rose and I are going to be having these SART conversations. We're going to SART collaborate and listen on what we're hoping to be as a monthly basis. So we'll be getting together, talking about, what's going on, what's new. So that way folks are more connected to us, more connected to SART, and we can kind of keep y'all in the loop. If there's something that you're interested in and would like us to talk about, please let me know. Feel free to email me again at sart@tasa.org. And let us know. We want to hear from you. We are here for y'all. Like, literally my role is to support the SART. So I want to know what y'all need, what y'all are interested in, what you want to hear about from us. So please feel free to reach out. And yes, so in about a week and a half, you're going to get this document along with our very first SART newsletter that will be coming out biannually this year. And then we'll see how that goes. And maybe we'll come out more frequently next year, but we're going to start biannually, and that will give y'all some more information about SART, what we're doing as we continue this work across the state.
Yay. Well, thank you, Deepika, for everything you're doing and really raising this a whole nother level and bringing people together and having a way to amplify like what's happening. And thank you all for those who are doing the reports, who are doing the SARTs, but don't feel bad if you haven't had a time to get your report in. Hey, we got this year coming up, we'll get more reports.
Yeah.
But it also is a way for, as Deepika mentioned, for us to really evaluate how we're doing as a coalition to help our partners around the state. And not only that, like, is there a policy implication here? And then we also have
Mhm.
the Sexual Assault Survivor Task Force. So we have a lot of people who want to get everything streamlined on the same page to benefit local communities and how you address sexual assault. So thank y'all so much. And Deepika, thank you for everything you're doing. And I love doing these things with you. And I'm going to figure out if data's the wrong word or if it's data or
Yeah.
what linguists
We're
can let me know what's going on there.
we're gonna look into this and
Yeah.
with someone in linguistics, and then we will let
Yeah.
you all know next month. Is
We
it data
will.
or is it data? Maybe
Data.
that will be our topic. I don't know. And big shout out to Courtney, who has been doing all the behind the scenes, and to our graphic designer Maddie, who helped design all this. Yes, this is definitely a collaborative effort, and we just appreciate that. We appreciate all of you taking the time out of your day to watch this and be with us, and we can't wait to show you what's coming up next.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.